morning, Morai v'Rabotai. We're continuing on Masechet Chagigah, and we are on Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. Started a new Mishnah, and the learning today has been dedicated for Zechut Hatzlacha Yehoshua ben Dina Diana and Yael bat Rivka. The Mishnah started in Machloket Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai in the halacha of permissibility of bringing korbanot on Yom Tov. So we mentioned that on Shabbat, of course, you cannot do Hilul Shabbat unless things that are meant to be done on Shabbat. And then on Yom Tov, you have Ach asher yaseh le'achel lechol nefesh hu levado yaseh lachem, that you could do melechet ochel nefesh. And Bet Shammai hold the Olat Reiyah is not considered Ochel Nefesh because it goes, is burnt, it's an Olah, Korban Olah is burnt completely aside from the skin, burnt up, and therefore it's not considered Ochel Nefesh, Asur. We mentioned, Machloket Yerushalmi and Bavli, that Yerushalmi holds that not only Olah is Asur, but even Shalmei Chagigah is Asur, because that also the core concept of Korban Chagigah is Legavoah, and therefore it's Asur, whereas Bavli in Masechet Betzah seems to hold that Korban Shalamim, whether it is Shalmei Chagigah or Shalmei Simcha, could be brought on Yom Tov. Now, the Bet Shammai says you don't bring Korban Olah. Let's go with Rashi that brings the Yerushalmi. You don't bring Shalmei Chagigah. You only could bring on Yom Tov Shalmei Simcha. But he doesn't say no, you could bring everything. You could bring Olah, you could bring Shlamim, Shalmei Chagigah, Shalmei Simcha. All of that is permissible. Says the Mishnah, Bet Shammai omrim mevi'in Shlamim ve'en somchin alehen. You bring Korban Shlamim, but you don't do Smicha, which is the second element of the Machloket Bet Hillel Bet Shammai. Bet Shammai hold that you could do Smicha prior. You could bring it on Yom Tov, having done Smicha on Erev Yom Tov. But here says, no, he has to be over last Yata. It has to be immediately Samuch LeKorban, there's Zvicha, and therefore he cannot do it from Erev Yom Tov. So says the Gemara, says the Mishnah, Aval lo olot, uBet Hillel omrim mevi'in shlamim ve'olot, and not only that, but v'somchin alehen. You could do Smicha as well. Now, Aseret Shechal Liyot be'Erev Shabbat, if Shavuot falls to be on Erev Shabbat, just like this year, Bet Shammai omrim Yom Tavoach achar Shabbat. The day that you do the Tevach, the day that you do the Shechita, is going to be achar Shabbat. It's going to be after Shabbat. Bet Hillel omrim, Bet Hillel say, En la Yom Tavoach achar Shabbat. It's a different girsa out here. It doesn't have Yom Tavoach achar Shabbat. In other words, Bet Shammai say you wait 2 days. And then on Sunday, you do the Zvicha. You do the Korban.
Is there a difference between waiting 1 day and waiting 2 days?
We will see actually in the Gemara whether or not there is. So it says the Gemara, Umodim she'imcha liyot beShabbat, and Bet Hillel agree that if it falls to be on Shabbat, then you do she'yom tavoach achar Shabbat. Then you do the Zevach on Sunday, because of course, on Shabbat itself, there's no heter of ochel nefesh, right? That's only on Yom Tov. So Bet Hillel say, well, if it falls to be on Friday, the Yom Tavoach is not on Sunday, because why? Because you could do it on Friday. Maybe a shorter day, but you could do everything. You could bring Korban Olah. On Yom Tov, you could bring Zivche Shalmei Todah, Shalmei Chagigah, Shalmei Simcha. All of those you could do. So therefore, the day of Shechita is not going to be on Sunday. But Modim, Bet Hillel Bet Shammai, Bet Hillel agree with Bet Shammai that if it falls to be Shavuot, first day, which is the only day really in Eretz Yisrael, falls to be on Shabbat, then when do you do the Zevach? You do the Korbanot on Sunday, the day after. And says the Mishnah, En Kohen Gadol mitlabesh bekelav umutarin beesped ubetanit shelo yekayem divrei haomrim aseret achar Shabbat. But we do some change from the regular conduct of a day of Yom Tov or day of Yom Tavoach, and that is that the Kohen Gadol doesn't wear the Shemona begadim, doesn't wear his nice begadim. We'll see what that means exactly. And also the day of Sunday, which is the day that you end up doing the Shechita of the Korbanot of Shavuot, you could do Hesped and you could do things that usually on a Yom Tov you can't do. No, normally on a Yom Tov, you cannot do hesped. Normally on a Yom Tov, you cannot do ta'anit. You can't fast on Yom Tov. You can't do eulogy on Yom Tov. But that Sunday, even though that you're bringing the korbanot of Shavuot, is mutar behesped v'ta'anit. Why? To disprove the point of tzdukim. So what is this? Because the pasuk says regarding Korban HaOmer, which is the beginning point of Shavuot, is very interesting. All the other Chagim, they have a date on the calendar. It says the 15th of Nisan is Pesach, and 15th of Tishrei is Sukkot, first day of Tishrei is, first day of the 7th month is Rosh Hashanah, 10th day of the 7th month of Tishrei is Yom Kippurim. All of them have a date on the calendar. Shavuot doesn't have a date on the calendar. It says, Miyom Haviyachem et Omer HaTenufa. From the day that you bring Korban Omer, right? And what does it say about that? Mimachorat HaShabbat Yenifenu HaKohen. You bring the terufa, the Korban HaOmer, mimachorat HaShabbat. So Tzdukim said Machorat HaShabbat means when? Means Sunday. Machorat HaShabbat. Day after Shabbat is Sunday. So always you start counting from Sunday, and when you count, Shiva Shavuot Ismorlach, Ma'acher Chermesh Bakama, that will be a Sunday. So Shavuot always, according to Tzdukim, fell and was celebrated on Sunday. Chachamim said no. Machorat Shabbat means Shabbat is a generic term for a Yom Tov. It's a day of Shevita from Melacha. Now, it's not only Saturday that you have Shevita from Melacha, but you also have Shevita from Melacha on Yom Tov. Every Yom Tov is called Shabbat. Even Yom Kippur is called Shabbat Shabbaton. And many other places we find that a Yom Tov is called Shabbat as well. So Machorat Shabbat, this is the first day of Pesach, which is called Shabbat, and whatever day that falls, you start counting Machorat Yom Tov Rishon Shel Pesach. That's the first day, and from there you count the 49 days, the Shiva Shavuot. Tisborlach starts from there. Now, because Tzdukim were a strong force in the time of Chazal, they did all kinds of things. Le'otzi miliban shel Tzdukim. We just had a Gemara, right, of Yudah ben Tabai, that he killed somebody to show by Edim Zomemin. They had various different machlokets with Tzdukim, and this is one of them. So here, in order to show publicly that halacha is not like Tzdukim, and we don't agree with them, they did hesped v'ta'anit. They allowed it on that, and the Kohen Gadol would not even wear nice stuff to show that this day is not a Yom Tov. This day is a regular day, even though that we end up doing the shechita of the korbanot when Shavuot falls to be on Shabbat. So even then, we will still do the hesped v'ta'anit, and the Kohen Gadol would not wear his fancy clothing. So that's the conclusion of the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Aboshaya, Minayin la'aseret sheyesh la tashlumin. How in the world do you know that aseret has tashlumin? Now, this is a Mishnah we learned, Gemara Mishnah we learned earlier on, of Zayin, of Tet. Says the Gemara, how do we know that they has tashlumin? Kol Shiva, 7 days of tashlumin for 1 day of Shavuot. Shenemar, v'chag hamatzot, chag haShavuot, u'chag haSukkot. Chag haShavuot is compared to Chag HaMatzot. It's also compared to Chag HaSukkot because it's sandwiched in the pasuk in between Chag HaMatzot and Chag HaSukkot. So it's Chag HaMatzot, Chag HaShavuot, Chag HaSukkot. Makish Chag HaShavuot, Chag HaMatzot. It creates a hekesh between Chag HaMatzot and Chag HaShavuot. And we know by Chag HaMatzot, how many days do you have? Ma Chag HaMatzot yesh la tashlumin kol shiv'ah. The whole 7 days of Chag HaMatzot you have tashlumin. If you didn't bring your korbanot, you could bring it the entire 7 days. Now, of course, the difference over here is by 7 days in Pesach, all 7 days are Moed. Over here, Shalom Al Israel. You finished 1 day of Shavuot. Tomorrow you're going to work. It's not a Moed. And yet you have this concept that we learn behekesh with comparison from Chag HaMatzot. Just like Chag HaMatzot, you have the entire 7 days to bring your korban as a tashlumin, to make over the korban that you missed. Over here also by Chag HaShavuot, you have 7 days to make up the korban you missed to bring on Shavuot. Says the Gemara, Af Chag HaShavuot yesh la tashlumin kol shiva. Chag HaShavuot also has tashlumin kol shiva. Says the Gemara, wait a second. If that's correct, you're forgetting something, because as we just said a minute ago, Chag HaShavuot is sandwiched and compared with Chag HaMatzot on one end, but also with Chag HaSukkot on the other end. And guess what? We learned earlier on in the Masechta, in Daftet, that Chag HaSukkot has how many days of Tashlumin? 8 days, because we mentioned, we had a whole back and forth, we're going to have it again here, that maybe 7 days, but I said, no, it's Af Yom Tov Achron. Even Yom Tov Achron is part and parcel of your Tashlumin, so you have really 8 days. So that's Geshmak. Why don't you compare it with Chag HaSukkot and get a little bit more? Get a day extra in for Tashlumin of Chag HaShavuot. Says Gemara, ואם המקיש לחג הסוכות, מה חג הסוכות? יש לה תשלומים כל שמונה, אף חג השבועות יש לה תשלומים כל שמונה. Compare it with חג השבועות and let it have 8 days of makeover. Says the Gemara, no, שמיני רגל בפני עצמו הוא. Says Shmini is not Sukkot. Shmini is Shmini Atzeret, that's what it is. So it's not a tashlumin of Sukkot. You still have 7 days only for the Chag. Says the Gemara, Emor da'amrin al Shmini regel bifnei atzmo, hanemili le'inyan pazar kashav. As we learned in Masechet Sukkah, there are 6 different items that Shmini Atzeret stands distinctly separate from Chag HaSukkot, and those are what we call pazar kashav, right? Many people after yeshiva years, they know pazar kashav, but they don't know what it stands for, right? So what are the pazar kashav? There are several different things that are distinctly different. So one of them is for pais. Pei stands for pais. Pais means they had a lottery. How did you choose which kohen is going to get the avodah in the Beit HaMikdash? Right? In the beginning they had fights. The Mishnah and Gemara in Masechet Yoma discussed this, how difficult it became, and then they started just having a pais. Now, in Sukkot you don't have pais, and this is something that people don't remember from the Sukkot in Masechet Sukkah necessarily. In Chag HaSukkot you didn't have pais, because there are so many korbanot that are brought that there is enough for everyone to go around and around and around, right? So, because you bring 70 korbanot, you bring 13 korbanot in the first day of Sukkot, 12, 11, as it goes, it diminishes, right? The korbanot of the Chag. So, how many mishmarot of Kohanim did we have? Huh? Well, the answer is, depends which time, right? Moshe Rabbeinu created how many groups of Kohanim? Moshe Rabbeinu created how many mishmarot? See if anyone knows that. 8. There's only 8 mishmarot in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. 4 for this son of Aaron HaKohen and 4 for the other son of Aaron HaKohen. Now, Elazar and Tamar, they got each one of them got 4 mishmarot of Kohanim, but then it grew and grew, and the time of Shmuel HaNavi / David HaMelech, they added to the number of the mishmarot, there were 24 mishmarot. Now, you have 24 mishmarot, how do you divide that? The 13 first ones come to bring the 13 korbanot of the Chag in the first day of Sukkot. How many is left? 11, right? 11 is left, so the remaining 11 we'll do tomorrow. And how many korbanot is left? 1. Who does that? The first mishmar. And it goes choser chalila. It goes on order and ends up, if you do the math, at the end of Sukkot, every one of the mishmarot has gotten 3 rounds of service in the week of Chag HaSukkot, aside from the 2 last ones that got twice. That's how the cheshbon is going to be. Comes to Shmini Chag HaSeret, Shmini Chag HaSeret doesn't follow that pattern. It only has like one little korban. So that goes back, it has pais. So the first one is pais. It does not continue the pattern of Chag HaSukkot, right? Pazar kashav. So Zayin is zman. That means you say enu shehyanu. At the end of Pesach, Yom Tov Achron Shel Pesach, do you say shehyanu? No shehyanu, it's the same Chag. At the end of Sukkot, when Shemini said, do you say shehyanu? Of course you say. Because Chag bifnei atzmo, it needs a shehyanu bifnei atzmo. It's a new Chag. Last time you had it was last year, so you say shehyanu, right? So that's the zman, and the identity of the korban. The identity of the korban is identified by being a new chag. He says shahayanu. Now, pazar resh is regel, right? It's considered a regel bifnei atzmo, and kuf is korban, right? It has a different set of korbanot. Does not follow the pattern of the chag. Shin is shir, right? Which has a different shir every chag. The Leviim by the Duchan, Leviim by Duchanam had a shir, and the shir was not the same. They didn't repeat it. So every chag had its own shir, and the shir of Sukkot was one. The shir of Shmini Atzeret was a different shir, and finally the bet is what? Bracha. That means, what's bracha, by the way? Bracha means they would. This is the only time that the Am would come to bless, to give a bracha to the king. Where does that come from? It comes really from Melachim Aleph, where is it? Perek Chet, I think it is, where Shlomo Melech finished the building of the Beit HaMikdash, and they had the inaugural processions of the Beit HaMikdash, and B'Yom HaShemini it says, he sent them, they came, they sent them to go home, and they came, they blessed the Shlomo Melech, and then they went, each one of them went to their homes. So, as a commemoration of that, and the Yom HaShemini, because this also felt to be on Sukkot and so on, it's not time for it right now, but Yom HaShemini they would come and give the bracha to the king, so that's only on Shmini Atzeret, which marks its own Yom Tov. So Pazar Kashav is what sets Shmini Chag HaSeret apart from Sukkot. So says the Gemara, only those 6 items are different. But after all, it's called Shmini Chag HaSeret for a reason. Shmini Chag HaSeret means what? B'Yom HaShemini means what? 8th day. 8th day from what? From Sukkot. From the beginning. So it is connected. It is connected. So says the Gemara, Hanamili Leilam Pazar Kashav, Aval Leinian Tashlumin the Rishonu. At the end of the day, it is still 8th day of Sukkot. From Sukkot, and therefore it's Tashlumin the Rishon. And really, this we had in the Mishnah. Meaning, the Gemara now just logicked with this, but it's really a Mishnah that we learned earlier on in our Masechta, right, of the Chagigah fame. Says the Gemara, Ditnan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Mishelo Chag B'Yom Tov HaRishon Shel Chag, if you did not bring the Korban Chagigah in the first day of the Chag, then, says the Mishnah, this is earlier on, Daf Tet Amud Aleph, Chogeg et kol haregel v'yom tov acharon. You go through the regel, you could bring it every single day, including Yom Tov Acharon, including the last day, which is Shmini Chag Atzeret. So now we're back to square one. Now that I know that you could bring to Tashlumin of Chag HaSukkot all of the 8 days, why in the world would you consider doing the hekesh, the comparison with Chag HaMatzot, and not do the better one? Isn't it better to get 1 day extra? So compare it with Chag HaSukkot, because again, Chag HaShavuot is smack in the middle. Chag HaMatzot, Chag HaShavuot, Chag HaSukkot. It's written literally next word to both of them. So do it with Chag HaSukkot, says the Gemara, no. Tafasta meruba lo tafasta, tafasta muat tafasta. This is something that has become like a line, a saying for not shooting for the stars necessarily and being practical, but this is actually a halachic concept. Tafasta meruba lo tafasta. When you could learn more and you could learn less, you get the lowest common denominator as the hekesh, and you don't go the bigger one. So therefore, if you have the choice of comparison with Chag HaSukkot, which is 8 days, and comparison with Chag HaMatzot, which is 7 days, you go with the lowest common denominator, which is 7 days, and you do it with that, given this concept of tafasta, meruba, lo tafasta. Says the Gemara. So what in the world is the reason, why do you even have the comparison of Chag HaSukkot? Like the Pasuk deliberately puts all three of them together to say that all three of them share something. So why is Chag HaSukkot mentioned together with the pack? Because you just said that Hashem wants you to pack up together Chag HaShavuot and Chag HaMatzot. So why do you even bring Chag HaSukkot in the pack? Is the question. The Gemara says, Gemara, Ela lemai hilcheta, katvei rachmana leChag HaSukkot. Why did Hashem write Chag HaSukkot next to them? Says the Gemara, la'akushe leChag HaMatzot. It is coming for a separate hekesh, a separate comparison. Chag HaMatzot. Now, what is the comparison? Ma Chag HaMatzot ta'un lina, av Chag HaSukkot ta'un lina. Just like Chag HaMatzot needs sleeping, Chag HaSukkot also needs sleeping. What does that mean? That means like this. When you finish the Chag, right? You know, you have nowadays all the phobias. You have benchophobia, right? You have fleischophobia. People don't want to have fleishik because Rahman al-Itzlan, you have to wait 6 hours that you're locked in. No one wants to be locked in this generation. Even for 6 hours, not having the ability of having milchik, that's already a phobia, right? You know, and of course, you have the benchophobia. Rahman al-Itzlan, you have to spend 2 minutes. It really shouldn't be less than 5 minutes to say proper benching. Rabbi Yezer ben David alav shalom once told me, he said people bench because they ate. He says, by me, I eat because I want to bench. It's a totally different perspective. It sounds like just a language, but it's really, if you think about it, it's two different human beings. Completely different outlook on life. But nevertheless, it's phobias. So here, you have Yom Tophobia, right? People, especially if it's a 3-day Yom Tov, like they're already from 6 o'clock a.m., they're itching. When is it going to be? What's the Rabbeinu Tam? Of course you're going to be machmir like Rabbeinu Tam, but, can't wait for it to go, right? Baruch Hashem is over. So Baruch Hashem is over, what do? Let's head back home. You're in Yerushalayim, you've been there for Shalosh Pa'amim B'Sharah Yarei Kol Zechucha B'nei Hashem. So now you're there. Can you leave right afterwards? Now imagine you're not, there's the halakha of le'olam, you should always enter and go out of town bekitov in daylight, not at night. That's a separate thing. But is it mutar? Can I go if I want to? And the halakha is no, you cannot go. You have to, by Pesach, you have to sleep that night, and only in the morning you could go. Now you can't leave Motzai Chag, right? You have to wait. I mean, nowadays we have a big nafkamina. People have cars. They have things. Can you go Motzai Chag? And the answer is no. You cannot go Motzai Chag by Pesach. And that is the halacha that we learn from Pesach to Sukkot. That's why Sukkot is compared and put into that pasuk to be hekesh with Chag HaMatzot. Just like Chag HaMatzot, you can't leave Motzai Chag and you have to wait until the morning after. Here also you have to wait until the boker after the Chag, and then you could leave. And that's the hekesh. Now, how do you know the first one? Says the Gemara, "La'akshe leChag HaMatzot, ma Chag HaMatzot ta'un lina, av Chag HaSukkot ta'un lina, v'hata menalan." How do we know even by Chag HaMatzot that you have to wait until the morning? Dichtiv, because the pasuk says, "Upanita baboker v'alachta le'alecha." Right? It says, "Panita baboker." You could turn around in the morning, and then you could leave and go back to your tent. So therefore, you could see that at night you cannot do it. And that's the halakha that you learn from Pesach to Chag HaSukkot. Says the Gemara. Tanan.
Are they talking about the end of the Chag?
The end of the Chag. Tanan, Aseret Shchaliot Erev Shabbat. Now we learned in the Mishnah that if Shavuot falls to be like this year on Erev Shabbat, Bet Shammai omrim Yom Tavoach achar HaShabbat, ובית הלל אומרים, אין לה יום תבוח. Bet Hillel say, there is no Yom Tavoach. Right? So that is a very interesting fact. Because it seems like Bet Hillel are saying, there's no Tashlumin. Finished, you're done. If you didn't bring, if Shavuot falls to be on Friday, there is no Tashlumin. Yalla. If you missed it, you are basically locked without opportunity of bringing Tashlumin until next Shavuot. Hazak Baruch. So Gemara says, wait a second, En la Yom Tavoach? My love, En la Yom Tavoach klal. The language of Bet Hillel seems to indicate that there is no Tashlumin whatsoever, and wait until next Shavuot. That's the language. En la Yom Tavoach. Now it happens to be that you don't need Yom Tavoach. You don't need Tashlumin, because Bet Hillel also happens to hold that you could bring all the korbanot of the Chag on Yom Tov, on Friday. Whereas Bet Shammai holds, no, you can't bring Korban Riyah and you can bring Shalmei Chagigah based on Rashi, based on Yerushalmi that we mentioned, right? But what if you couldn't bring it? For whatever reason. Your knife broke. You couldn't bring the Korban for whatever reason, right? But Hillel seemed to indicate, En la Yom Tavoach, he cannot do Tashlumin. One says, really? En la Yom Tavoach? Says the Gemara, no. Lo, she'ein asricha Yom Tavoach. It just means simple. Don't get too complicated. It means you don't need Yom Tavoach because you could bring the Korbanot of the Chag, all of them, including Korban HaReiyah, of Olat HaReiyah, on Friday. But Erachinami, for whatever reason, you were prevented to do the Korban on Friday, you still have all your days of Tashlumin, you still have it. So says the Gemara, Umay Kamash Malan, what does this teach us? That the Makrevinan Beyomeh, that we bring the Korban in the same day. That means on Friday you bring all the korbanot, but it doesn't mean that you're not going to have the opportunity of doing Tashlumin if you missed it. But then the Gemara says, wait a second. That's all it's teaching you. It's teaching you that you bring this machloket, if you could bring the korban on Yom Tov or not. Guess what? That is the Reisha of the Mishnah. What did the Reisha, the beginning line of Mishnah, what did the Mishnah teach us? That there is a machloket between Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai, whether or not you could bring Korban HaReiyah and Shalmei Chagigah on Yom Tov. Bet Shammai says, no, you cannot bring it. Bet Hillel says, yes, you could bring it. That's the Mishnah in the beginning, right? Now, if you apply that to a regular day of Friday, which is a regular day, it would tell you automatically that Bet Hillel says, bring all three Korbanot. And Bet Shammai would tell you, no, just bring Shalmei, Simcha. And the other two you have to wait for Tashlumin. So that's just application of the Reisha of the Mishnah. You're with me? Anybody with me? Right? I'll say it again. The Reisha of the Mishnah says that there is a general machloket Bet Hillel Bet Shammai. Bet Shammai holds you cannot bring on Yom Tov of Shavuot, weekday, regular. On Yom Tov, you cannot bring Korban Riyah or Lat Riyah. You also cannot bring, based on Rashi, you cannot bring Shalmei Chagigah. And Bet Hillel says, no, you could bring it. Now, if I say, if it's Sunday, can I do that? Same thing. Monday, same thing, yeah, same thing. Tuesday, yeah. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, same thing. Yes, same thing. I don't need the Mishnah to apply this halacha of the Reisha of the Mishnah to a day of the week called Friday. I could do it myself. The entire second part of the Mishnah seems to just be application of one of the regular weekdays of what the halacha was in the Reisha of the Mishnah. What's the chidush? I could do that myself. When you tell me the formula, when you tell me that on Yom Tov Bet Shammai does not bring Korban Reya, and doesn't bring Shalmei Chagigah, so I'll know Friday will be the same thing. And what would Bet Hillel do? I know that also from the beginning of the Mishnah. Bet Hillel would say, do it. So what's the Hidush? Says the Gemara, you already told me the machloket. You don't need to tell me again an application of that on Friday. Says the Gemara, that's the ratio of the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, no. If the Mishnah would only tell me the beginning, the ratio, you know what I would say? I would say that applies to Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but not Friday. Why? What is the chidush by Erev Shabbat? The chidush is very pashut. Says the Gemara, because we would think that Tashlumin only works when you could do it on the day after. In other words, you can't do it on Yom Tov, but you could do it the day after. So don't do it on Yom Tov, but wait after Yom Tov, you do it the day after. And that's when Bet Shammai says, don't do it. But in this case, when the Yom Tov falls to be on Erev Shabbat, not only you can't do it that day, but you also can't do it the day after. So you have to bump it up. How many days? 2 days. You bump it up 2 days, you're going to forget it. This is, by the way, Musar Haskel, right? There would be a serious Hava Amina in the Gemara, Rashi explains here, that if you wait on something 2 days, you're never going to do it again. So we are so afraid of Choshesh of this, that say, if you're going to do it, you're not going to end up doing it, so maybe you should do it right now. There should be no tashlumin whatsoever. Says the Gemara, Avar Hacha, but here in this case that it falls on Friday, maybe even Bet Shammai would agree with Bet Hillel that you should do all of the korbanot that day, because even though that's not sorech ochel nefesh, it is better to do it than not to miss the whole thing. And if you wait 2 days and you don't do it for 2 days, next thing you know, you're going to forget and be poshea and not just do the whole thing. There's a tremendous musar asker. You say, I'll do it tomorrow. There's always two kinds of human beings in the world. There's the today Jews and then there's the tomorrow Jews, right? That's the difference between, hayom, im bekoli yishma'u. You have to do it today. Tomorrow, immediately afterwards. If you can't do it today and you can't do it tomorrow, well, be like, that's never going to happen. So it will be a serious Havamah. So the Kamash Malan, the Gemara is, no. You still have days, right? That's the Kamash Malan. So,
no yesterday Jews?
Oh, there's plenty of yesterday people who are always reminiscing of the good old days and they do nothing in their life. That's correct. So, and if it would be teaching us only this, why do you need now the Resha and Sefa? Because in the Resha also there is a Chidush. If you would just say this one, the Friday, right? I would say, I would say only in the case of Shavuot and Erev Shabbat, Bet Hillel says do it that day, because tomorrow you can't do. But if it would be Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday, Sunday, then even maybe Efshar Ulai possible, maybe Bet Hillel also would agree with Bet Shammai that on a regular weekday, when you can't do the Tashlumin tomorrow, do it tomorrow. So therefore, Kamash Malan, that each one of them sticks to their guns throughout. Doesn't matter what day it is, from Sunday through Friday, you could you could do it according to Bet Hillel. The same day of Yom Tov, and according to Bet Shammai, you have to do it after Yom Tov. Says the Gemara. Amud Bet Shammai, we are out of time, but we'll continue this in the days to come.